I never expected a trip to Clearwater, Florida, to become the defining moment of my later years. My name is Mabel Jensen. I'm 73 years old. And until last spring, I believed that love from your children was something unconditional. It wasn't. Not for me. It started like a gesture of kindness. My daughter Laura and her husband Jeremy proposed a healing vacation just 6 weeks after my husband Robert passed away. "You need to get out of the house, Mom," Laura said as she helped herself to the last of my cinnamon tea. "It's what Dad would have wanted." Maybe she was right. I hadn't slept properly since the funeral. Our home in Peoria, Illinois, felt like a hollow museum of everything we'd built together. Robert's slippers were still under the bed. The faucet still dripped like he never fixed it. When Laura offered the trip, I said yes too quickly, too hopefully. I even sold Robert's antique compass, the one he gave me on our 30th anniversary, to cover part of the ticket. "Everyone's pitching in," Jeremy said, though I never saw anyone else reach for a wallet. They picked me up the morning of the flight. We drove to Springfield Branson Airport in a rush, Laura texting furiously while Jeremy complained about traffic. I sat quietly in the backseat, clutching a new book I'd bought for the trip and a tote with homemade snacks I made for the family. But as soon as we reached the airport, something felt off. They checked in swiftly. First class. Luggage tagged priority. I tried to laugh it off. "You kids treat yourselves," I said. Laura smiled politely but didn't respond. When I asked about my bag, she waved it off. "Don't worry, Mom. Jeremy's got it." At the counter, the airline clerk scanned my ticket. Her face changed. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It appears this is a one-way ticket." I blinked. There must be a mistake. "I'm with the Coopers. We're all flying together." She double-checked. "They have return flights. You do not." I turned. Laura and Jeremy were already walking toward the security gate. I rushed over. "Laura? This says I don't have a return flight." She didn't even flinch. "Right, Mom. We figured you could use some time alone. Maybe visit Aunt Clara in Pensacola. You'll figure it out." "Figure it out?" Jeremy chimed in without looking at me. "You've got your phone. There's Wi-Fi. Or just sell something if you're short. Greyhound still runs, right?" And then they left. I stood at the gate, my hands trembling, the itinerary paper crumpling in my palm. The airport swirled around me. Laughter, rolling suitcases, the scent of coffee and jet fuel. But I was frozen. Alone. And something in my chest cracked quietly. I didn't cry. Not then. I found a bench and sat, my chin lifted, heart pounding. Inside my cardigan, tucked in a sewn-in pocket, was something I hadn't told anyone about. A card. A contact. One of Robert's old friends, now a lawyer, who once said to me, "If the sky ever falls, Mabel, come see me." That moment, it didn't just fall. It shattered. The next hour passed like fog. I sat still, watching the world move as if I were behind glass. People moved quickly, decisively. I did not. Not until the PA crackled with a final call for a flight to Miami. Not until the ache in my hands reminded me I was still holding that crumpled piece of paper. I stood slowly. My knees had stiffened. My shoulders ached. But I moved. Not toward the exit. Not toward some solution. Toward the coffee shop by Gate 7. I needed to think. I ordered a tea. Chamomile. Robert's favorite. The cup shook slightly in my hands as I made my way to a quiet corner by the window. That's when I pulled the small manila envelope from my sweater's lining. The lawyer's card was still there. Embossed clean like it had been waiting. Martin D. Collier, Estate Law and Trusts. I stared at his name for a long time before I reached into my tote for my phone. I hesitated. Did I want to open this door? Did I want to step into something that would inevitably change everything? Yes, because everything had already changed. I dialed. 1 ring. 2. Then a voice I remembered from a lifetime ago. "Mabel Jensen? I was wondering when I'd hear from you." His voice was calm, warm, but edged with something sharp. Memory, maybe. Or expectation. "I need help," I said. "Then let's start there," he replied. "Where are you?" I told him. He didn't sound surprised. He asked if I could get to his office in Indianapolis. I looked out the window at a billboard advertising car rentals and said, "Yes." By that evening, I was in a rented Corolla heading north on I-65. Alone, determined, unsure of what tomorrow would bring, but certain I could not return to the life I just left behind. When I reached Martin's office, he met me at the door. Taller than I remembered, his hair now more gray than brown, but his eyes still sharp. He ushered me into his office without ceremony. "You've always been the quiet one," he said. "Robert talked about you like you hung the moon." I smiled sadly. I was quiet because I thought that's what love looked like. He nodded. "It's not." I pulled a folder from my bag. Inside were old documents, the deed to the house, Robert's last insurance papers, the modest investment account we never touched. Martin read in silence. Then he said something I didn't expect. "You know you can change everything, right? The will, the trust, the beneficiaries." I swallowed. "Even if they're family?" He set down the papers. "Especially if they're family who forget what that means." There was a pause. A long one. Then I nodded. "Then let's change everything." The next morning, I returned to his office at 9 sharp. Martin had already drafted the paperwork. We spent the next 3 hours reviewing line by line. I crossed out names, added new instructions, set contingencies. "I want every dime protected," I said. "And I want a clause. No access without an in-person meeting with me." Martin raised an eyebrow. "A test." "A boundary," I replied. "One they've never respected." He nodded. By lunch, the paperwork was ready for signature. My hand didn't shake. When I was done, I exhaled deeply. It felt like stepping out of someone else's life and back into my own. Afterward, I walked along the canal path in downtown Indianapolis. The water shimmered under the early spring sun. Ducks floated lazily, undisturbed by the world's chaos. I sat on a bench, letting myself feel the weight of what I'd just done. I thought of Robert, of his voice in the kitchen humming off-key, of how he used to say, "If anything happens, you'll know what to do." And now I finally had. I returned home to Peoria on a gray Wednesday, the kind of day where the sky seems uncertain whether to cry or hold back. The daffodils in the front yard had bloomed in my absence, bright and defiantly alive. I stepped onto the porch, my suitcase wheels catching on the cracks in the walkway Robert always meant to patch. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't heartbroken, but because I had something else now. Purpose. Inside, the house was exactly as I had left it. Dust had settled slightly on the kitchen counter. A dead spider lay curled in the bathtub. Nothing mourned my absence. Nothing had changed except me. The next few days were spent in quiet motion. I cleaned with the kind of precision that only the betrayed can muster. I opened windows to let in the early spring breeze and aired out not just the rooms, but the weight that had clung to them for years. I boxed up Laura's childhood things from the attic. Her old dance shoes. Her high school trophies. A framed certificate from the Most Improved Math Award in 6th grade. I didn't cry. I didn't feel pride. I just packed. Each box I filled, I labeled clearly. Pick up or discard by June 1st. I stacked them in the garage. When the garage was full, I started on the basement. Robert's tool chest stayed. Everything else could go. I spent long evenings in the garden. Robert had planted a row of blueberry bushes 10 years ago. They had never really flourished, not until now. I worked the soil with my bare hands, pulling weeds with a kind of vengeance. I planted rosemary, lavender, snapdragons. I didn't wear gloves. I needed the feel of earth, something honest, something that didn't ask for explanations or apologies. 3 weeks later, the letter arrived. A white envelope. Laura's handwriting. Careful and formal. "Mom, we hope you're doing well. We're back from Florida. It was a lovely trip, though of course we missed you. We were thinking it might be good to come by next weekend and check on things. Maybe go over the estate paperwork? We'd love to talk about the future." The word estate tasted like rust on my tongue. I didn't reply. Not with words. Instead, I drove into town and stopped at a local florist. I ordered a single wreath. Small, elegant, made entirely of dried lavender and white peonies. No card. I had it delivered to their address with a note that read only, "Some things do not return." 3 days passed. Then came the knock on my door. It wasn't Laura. It was Jeremy. He stood on my porch, his expensive jacket pressed, his sunglasses perched in his hair like a model posing for casual charm. I opened the door slowly but did not invite him in. "Hi, Mabel. We got the flowers." Laura was confused. "Were you?" I asked. He shifted. "Look, we know things didn't go as planned at the airport. We just thought." "You didn't think," I said. "That's the point." There was a silence. "We'd really like to sit down, talk. Maybe see what Robert might have left behind that needs to be sorted out." Now it was my turn to shift. "There's nothing to sort. It's all been handled." His eyebrows raised slightly. "Handled?" I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. "I met with Martin Collier. Everything has been reassigned." "You're serious?" "Deadly." Another silence. He was calculating, I could see it. Behind the fake warmth and practiced disappointment, his mind raced. "We're your family, Mabel." "No. You were. And I loved you like you were mine. But people don't leave the people they love stranded with no way home." He opened his mouth to argue but closed it again. "There is no money coming your way. No house. No account. No second chances." Then I smiled. A real smile. The kind that didn't come from vindictiveness but peace. Jeremy left without another word. A week later, Laura sent another letter. This time it was angry. Accusations. Guilt. Pleas wrapped in insults. I didn't read the whole thing. I tucked it in the fireplace and watched it burn. And then the phone calls started. From numbers I didn't know. Messages left by voices that sounded like strangers using familiar names. They spoke of fairness, of family, of confusion. I didn't answer. Instead, I focused on the garden. By summer, the blueberries had ripened. That summer, I began to live on my own terms. I made a list, not of chores or groceries. Those were already pinned to the fridge like clockwork. This was a list of boundaries. Things I would no longer tolerate. Lines that wouldn't be crossed again. Number 1. No one enters my home without my invitation. Number 2. No one questions how I choose to live. Number 3. My peace is not up for negotiation. Sounds simple, but it wasn't. Boundaries are tricky things when you've lived most of your life trying not to upset anyone. But each morning I walked through my garden, reciting them like scripture. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was becoming something better, solid. By mid-July, word had spread. My niece Audrey called from South Dakota. "Aunt Mabel, I heard there's been drama. You okay?" Her voice was warm, the kind of warm that doesn't expect something in return. "I'm planting a new row of carrots," I said. "So yes, I'm doing just fine." She chuckled. "You always were the tough one." That evening I wrote a letter. Not to Laura. Not to Jeremy. To myself. It started with "Dear Mabel," and ended with "I forgive you for staying silent so long." Meanwhile, Laura and Jeremy weren't silent. They left voicemails nearly every week now. Some sounded desperate, others rehearsed, like they were following advice from someone who knew about wills and estates. One message stood out. Jeremy, late at night, clearly drunk or pretending to be. "You're being cold, Mabel. We're your family. How can you cut us out?" I didn't respond, but I saved the voicemail. I had started documenting everything. Grace, my neighbor, brought over a pie and told me she'd overheard Laura speaking to someone outside on her phone. She was pacing. Sounded angry. Something about a lawyer and you changing everything. "I did," I said. Grace set down the pie. "Good." We shared a slice with coffee in silence. Grace had been there when Robert passed. She was the one who stayed with me during the storm that knocked out our power the week after his funeral. She didn't say much, but she stayed. Sometimes that's all you need. By late August, the blueberries had doubled in size. Neighbors stopped by to admire the garden. A little girl named Evelyn from down the street asked if she could help me water the tomatoes. Her mother apologized for the intrusion, but I waved it off. "Let her stay," I said. "She reminds me of someone." Evelyn became a regular visitor. She called me Miss Mabel and asked 1,000 questions. I didn't mind. It was good to be seen again, really seen. One afternoon she asked, "Do you have kids?" I paused, then said, "I used to." She frowned. "What happened?" "They forgot how to love," I replied. She nodded like she understood. "That's sad." "It is," I said. But forgetting goes both ways. In September, a letter arrived not from Laura or Jeremy, but from an attorney with a name I didn't recognize. Inside was a formal request for a conversation regarding the recent revision of asset allocation. I placed the letter in a folder marked, "No response needed." Later that week, Martin called. "They're shopping for lawyers," he said. "But you're safe. Everything's ironclad." "Good," I said. "Let them spend the money they thought they'd inherit." The garden shifted with the season. Autumn brought crisp mornings and rust-colored leaves. I harvested the last of the carrots. I baked a pie with the blueberries and brought it to Grace. She cried when she tasted it. "It tastes like something you don't get back," she whispered. "I know," I said. And in that moment I understood something. I hadn't just changed my will. I had rewritten my story. It happened on a Thursday. I was pruning the roses when the knock came, firm, sharp, and legal. Grace had just left with a basket of extra tomatoes, and the sun was tilting toward the late afternoon gold. I opened the door to a young man in a suit too tight for his ambition. "Mrs. Jensen?" he asked. "Yes. You've been served." He handed me an envelope, thick and official. I opened it at the kitchen table with hands that no longer trembled. Inside, a civil summons. Laura was suing me, contesting the new will, demanding an injunction against the revised estate plan, and a full audit of every financial move made since Robert's death. It was bold. It was stupid, and it was exactly what I expected. I called Martin. He listened quietly, then said, "We'll let them make their case, and then we'll make ours." The trial was set for early November. The courthouse was a pale stone building with high ceilings and bad acoustics. I wore a navy suit I hadn't touched since Robert's retirement gala. Grace insisted on coming. "Every heroine needs a witness," she said. Laura and Jeremy sat across the aisle with two lawyers, one gray-haired and slick, the other young and smug. Laura didn't look at me. Jeremy gave me a weak smile that slid off his face when I didn't return it. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant. Laura's lawyer went first. They painted a picture of confusion, of emotional instability. They claimed I'd been manipulated, that Martin had influenced me unfairly during a time of grief, that I wasn't of sound mind, that I had always promised the estate would be theirs. They cited birthday cards and text messages, even an old voicemail I'd left Laura when she broke her wrist 5 years ago. Then it was Martin's turn. He stood slowly, adjusted his glasses. Then he introduced our witnesses. Grace testified about the airport, about the luggage that never made it back, about the voicemail Laura had left on speakerphone one night when she didn't know Grace was nearby. Then came the financial advisor Robert and I had trusted for years. He explained the transfer dates, the safeguards, the repeated confirmations I'd made, in writing and on recorded calls. And then Martin played a voicemail. Jeremy's voice slurred and angry. "You're being cold, Mabel. We're your family. How can you cut us out?" The courtroom was silent. Martin turned to the judge. "My client did not act out of confusion or manipulation. She acted out of clarity. Clarity earned after betrayal." Then he handed the judge a letter. It was from Robert, written a year before he died. It outlined his desire to revise the will to reflect the true nature of our relationships as they reveal themselves. He had signed it, dated it. It wasn't a legal directive, just a personal note. But its weight was palpable. Laura paled. Jeremy sank in his seat. The judge read everything. Twice. Then she spoke. "This court finds no evidence of coercion, fraud, or diminished capacity. The estate plan stands." She looked at Laura. Disappointment is not grounds for litigation. And just like that, it was over. I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I'd been in years. Grace looped her arm through mine. "You know what I think?" "What's that?" "You didn't just win, Mabel. You showed them what legacy really looks like." That night, I lit a candle for Robert. I poured 2 cups of tea. I sat across from his empty chair, lifted mine, and whispered, "We did it." Then I stood, walked to the window, and watched the stars come out. And I didn't feel alone.